Here to tell us more is our international affairs commentator, Douglas Herbert. Hello to you, Doug.
I will.
This is a rare visit by an Asian leader since the war began. What's the purpose of this surprise trip?
Well, look, South Korea has been in the front lines with humanitarian aid, hundreds of millions of dollars to Ukraine. It has joined the international Western sanctions against Russia for its invasion of Ukraine. Where has it drawn the line, Will? It has not sold or given or donated any weapons directly to Ukraine throughout this war. Not a single one. Now, why? Well, officially it has cited domestic laws that strictly regulate the sale, the shipping of weapons to war zones. That's the official explanation. Unofficially, anyone who follows Korea will tell you that they are more than reluctant to arm Ukraine because they don't want to antagonize Russia. Two major reasons for this. One is an economic relationship. It has billions of dollars in trade with Russia. It's obviously a regional neighbor. But perhaps more importantly is the issue of North Korea. It is afraid that perhaps if it does anything to rub Russia the wrong way, i.e. by arming Ukraine, Russia's going to go ahead and start either arming or helping in other ways North Korea, which is the absolute nemesis in every way, shape, and form for South Korea. So its fears on that front are holding it back on the weapons front. And interestingly, at home, a relatively recent Gallup Korea poll shows that only 15% of South Koreans are actually in favor of directly arming Ukraine. Now, you can imagine what's so frustrating for the Ukrainians about this, and they have been pleading with the Koreans to step up and please directly arm, especially the Ukrainians should be aware, given their experience 7 years ago when many countries in the world helped South Korea when it was facing an existential threat from North Korea. They say you should be sensitive to what we're facing now, very similar to what you faced against North Korea. It's not that it's falling on deaf ears, but it's an extremely, very difficult to make South Korea come around and change its stance on this issue. It's one of the world's largest weapons exporters. It has one of the biggest stockpiles of ammunition and artillery and all of that. And it's just sitting there right now. At least it's not being sent to Ukraine. The Ukrainians say that potentially South Korea could help change the tide of this war if it were to directly send weapons to Kyiv.
But not directly sending weapons, though it is doing something.
It is doing something. Well, one of the things it's doing is sending a lot of non-lethal aid. We saw this very early in the war from other countries, right? So it's sending things like, helmets, bulletproof vests, all of that. Nothing that is seen as offensive, non-military aid. That said, Moscow still sees any sending, whether it's vehicles or whatever, of anything to Ukraine from South Korea as potentially a hostile act, and has said so as much. So whether that's really going to matter either way with Russia is unclear. What it has been doing is it has been indirectly, some would say, helping to arm Ukraine by sending weapons to countries that have armed Ukraine, such as Poland, such as the United States, artillery. There were plans announced last November by the Pentagon that it was going to receive artillery shells from South Korea to help replenish stocks that had been sent to Ukraine from the U.S. Also, Poland, almost $6 billion, I believe it was howitzers last year, or early this year it was announced. The problem here is that has only worked because the U.S. has promised that it would be the end user, that the artillery shells it got from South Korea to replenish its stocks at home would not be sent on to Ukraine. Some people believe, some military observers believe, that some of those weapons that South Korea is indirectly supplying to countries that have armed Ukraine are making their way to Ukraine anyway. So you could almost argue that maybe South Korea is already directly arming Ukraine. Whether this policy is going to change, it's very, very hard. I told you about the South Korean opposition, and I told you about its fears with Russia. But there are those in South Korea who say that on a moral level, on an ethical level, and just if it truly wants to be on the right side of justice and history, South Korea really should give a rethink to its official position against directly arming Ukraine.
All right, Doug.